Victorian pineapples.
Delicious.
Welcome to Bartender at Large. I'm your host, Eric Castro. Today we're at Boilermaker in the East Village, New York City. And as usual, I'm joined by some of the top bartenders in the industry. With me today are
Don Lee of Cocktail Kingdom.
And Dave Arnold of Booker and Dax.
All right, fellas, thanks for joining me today. The reason I have you here, of course, is not only great bartenders make wonderful drinks, but because you guys are two of the greatest cocktail minds when it comes to science. Fellas, talk to me. How'd you get involved with the cocktails and the cocktail science and kind of applying that behind the bar?
I don't think it's a choice, the scientific mind. It's just you can't turn it off. It's just how you think of the world. There's a problem, you think of solutions, and you deal with it. It's not that you're trying to be sciencey. It's just that's the logical way you would deal with the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think Don's pretty much the same way, but I always kind of approach problems in the same way. It's just nowadays it happens to be a lot easier and there's a lot more reach for that kind of thinking. But I would be thinking this way no matter what time I was in.
Right.
Yeah.
We just happen to apply it to cocktails, and we seem to be one of the few people that does science in cocktails, but it's really just the way of thinking about everything in life. It's more engineering than science, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first time I met you, Don, like I'd heard people talk about, oh, you gotta meet this Don guy, man. He's so crazy to cocktails and like it breaks it all down to like the minutia. And then when we first met, we just hit it off instantly. We were like talking about how many dashes go to, how much volume is actually in a dash of bitters.
Right. Well, people say things, but they generally don't back it up with real knowledge. Mm-hmm. And it's usually something that some other bartender told them. Best case scenario, some other bartender told them something. Otherwise, they're just making things up for customers. And so one of the questions that I've always had was when I read a recipe, like, what is a dash?
Yeah.
And so that's a question you can answer. There's a lot of questions you can't answer, but that's one you actually can. So took an entire bottle of Angostura, dashed 1 ounce one dash at a time through the entire bottle, went through 3 complete bottles to make sure that one bottle wasn't a fluke, and then just measured it. The technical word would be, there are things that are qualitative and there are things that are quantitative. This is quantitative. We can count this, we can measure this. So if we can get an answer, why don't we just find an answer?
Even qualitative things, though, can be measured, more accurately than they had been in the past. I mean,
True.
There was a huge kind of increase in, it's not really science, new techniques in all throughout kind of food and bar industry. And because there's so much of bartending is about kind of stories and showmanship and brand, that kind of, there's a lot of pseudo-scientific like leaking of theory into the bar world over the past 10 years or so. So then there was a really, I think, big opening for people to come in and be like, well, let's just not mess around with this. Let's actually look at some of these things in a more accurate and repeatable way. It's not even really science. It's really just kind of observation and recording kind of what you observe and making sure you can get things right and have decent kind of explanations for what's going on.
What are some of the biggest myths that are accepted as truth in the bar world right now, you see?
Well, I think we've crushed some of the biggest ones. I think that some of the biggest myths from 5, 6, 7 years ago are no longer the biggest myths because they've been thoroughly crushed. So it was not uncommon 8 years ago to have someone say, 8, 9 years ago, to have someone say that bigger ice was colder, or clearer ice was colder, or that it would chill more. In fact, obviously it's not colder, and obviously it chills less because it has less surface area per unit volume. But it's like, these are things I think that now are no longer kind of commonplace articles of BS that are tossed around at bar conferences, but before were. I mean, that's right.
I mean, they're still tossed around, just not in the conferences anymore. I still hear plenty of times bartenders say, oh yeah, like I've got a technique that'll make this colder with less dilution. And that's just,
it's called a freezer.
It does not
work
that way.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And the only reason I was going to say that is because I read it in your book.
Yeah, no, but it's like the thing is like I find in life in general is that things that you say just to help your story or to help marketing are kind of short-term helps. right? They're always short-term helps. Like they might make you look good in front of a customer, in front of a demo, but you're always better off actually trying to figure out what's going on, or just not asking the question at all. You know what I mean? Than maintaining something that's just false.
Yeah. Have you ever read On Bullshit? It's an interesting
Oh,
essay.
who wrote that? It was
I forget
famous.
the author. It's a famous
Frankfurt,
essay.
right?
Could be.
Frankfurt, I think
Not
Frankfurt,
sure.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it has a very technical academic explanation of what bullshit is, because it's different from a straight up lie.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to pull a fast one in the sense that you're trying to deceive somebody. You almost believe the lie yourself and you want it to be true, and you're trying to say this because you're trying to like push a narrative forward that isn't necessarily one that is malicious. It's one of, I want to believe this too, let's all believe in this mythology, and that's what bullshit is. But it's not helpful when people start, especially when people start believing it dogmatically, like a lot of bartenders have for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Flip side of it though is that a lot of people who believe things that are incorrect still make fabulous drinks, because in the real life their practice is what their practice is and their story is what their story is, and they might not kind of marry up, and good practitioners make good drinks regardless of what's going on in their head
true.
when they're talking. You
Right.
know?
But going back to your question about the whole science thing, every baby is a scientist. Everyone starts out as a scientist based on like evidence and experiment. A baby will pick something up, will put it in its mouth, and if it likes it, it'll keep doing it, and if it doesn't, it'll stop doing it. I mean, it is very simple, but that's all life is, right?
That's what I'm doing with this rum,
Right?
Yeah.
It's delicious, you keep drinking it. People, unfortunately, will find something that they like and then will come up with a reason to explain why they like it that has nothing to do with the reality of what makes it actually good. And that's where that bullshit comes in. So if you want the real answer, you can find it. But most people just are lazy, and they'll take the truth that's given to them rather than trying to find the real truth for themselves.
And also, there's a difference between trying to find the answer to how to make a drink better and coming up with an explanation you don't even need anyway. A story.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, it's the same kind of a problem. Sometimes if a story is just a story, this rum was made by a mythical griffin. You know what I mean? And then like you make up the story.
Using Victorian pineapples.
Victorian pineapples, literally from the Victorian time. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like the story can be as much crazy as you want, but that's not affecting the way you make a drink with it. It's just affecting the kind of feeling that a customer or someone has about it. And that's not necessarily harmful up front, but the problem is some of the stories that you think are just BS stories like that eventually creep into changing your practice, and that's when it gets to be kind of a pain in the butt.
Right. I mean, a lot of what bartenders do is bullshit in the sense that you're trying to put on a show for somebody. In the same way that magic is bullshit.
There's theater involved.
Yeah, it's not real. We all know it's not real. When you see Penn and Teller do a trick, it's a trick. They will tell you it's a trick. But the beauty of it is the fact that you can't see the trick when it happens, right? And so that's all we do. It's just that we, for some reason, insert a layer of bullshit in the middle sometimes.
Yeah, and I actually read a study recently that said that in a quieter, calmer environment, people will enjoy flavors better.
Is that true?
Because it's a way of, their senses aren't distracted. So, which made me think in terms of cocktails, maybe in a calm environment, like the speakeasy with mellow jazz playing, will that make a cocktail taste better than if you were like in a nightclub?
That's plausible. Depends on how much you want to get into the pants of the person next to you, I guess, too. That also affects it.
True, yeah.
And from an operator standpoint, there's how much is the individual person going to enjoy a particular drink versus how many drinks you're going to get out of that customer and how many minutes, check out. I mean, it's a business after all, so
Yes.
that comes into it a lot, and I think I know you study this kind of stuff all the time. It's not you want, obviously, like in my heart, I want the customer to enjoy everything they have maximally. But on the other hand, someone's like, "Man, it's a delicious drink, but can you get a couple more pounders on the menu so that someone like pounds that thing and then like gives that seat to somebody else after they buy their."
I believe the industry term is panty dropper.
Yeah, well, they can do whatever they want once they leave the establishment. You know what I mean? Our bathrooms are quite small.
That makes me think of two things. So first of all, the airline industry has done a lot of research on this, specifically the effect of noise on your dining experience. And so there is some evidence that says that the way you perceive flavor is different in like an airplane environment. But that's, is it just the noise? Is it the pressure?
They used to taste in altitude chambers. I know they used to,
because it could make a difference. So there's probably something there. But honestly, with the exception today of like haters on Yelp, who goes to a bar wanting to have a bad time, right? You're predisposed to have a good time. You go because you either feel good and want to feel better, or you feel bad and you want to feel better, right? Who goes to a bar thinking like, I'm going to go here and I'm going to hate everything about this, right?
Yeah,
so
you're right.
Unless you go out of your way to ruin somebody's experience, like they already are on your side, right? So
what do you think's happened over the past 10 years with, I mean, okay, so you go to like cocktail palaces like 10 years ago, and there was a definite need for the bartenders to put on an air of authority over the customer in a way that I no longer think is necessary. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But I think that was, it's at that time, they needed to differentiate themselves from the masses of other bartenders.
Right.
And so in the same way that you look at any kind of countercultural revolution, if people want to set themselves apart, and you could be punk and get tattoos and have crazy hair and have the look and feel in terms of clothes, or you can wear like a vest and a tie and have a mustache and arm garters and pontificate about different kinds of bitters. But it's just trying to set yourself apart from whatever the establishment is.
Right, but I think as a group, we've gotten beyond the need to kind of look down your nose at the customer, because I think the average customer, at least in in the New York and the environments where I hang out a lot, they've already come to your bar, like you say, accepting that you're a professional and that you have knowledge and skill, so you don't need to project anymore.
I also think our clientele has evolved, whereas like back then you had to like kind of draw the line in the sand. And you're like, look, we're one of only 2 or 3 bars in town doing this. You came here for this reason. I'm gonna take an air of superiority over you, right? But as more and more bars are popping up all over town, like customers don't want that anymore.
Right.
Like, oh, such and such has good drinks. This place, East Village alone, there's a good cocktail bar every block.
Right. Yeah. And now the trend, if you want to put it in those terms, is it's the cocktail bar where they don't have pretension. That's what everyone wants to be. It's a cocktail bar where you get your drinks quickly and everyone's nice to you. And at some point, that's going to be so popular that some people are going to say, no, we're the kind of cocktail bar where we're mean to people again. It's just a pendulum that goes back and forth.
I know when we started at Booker and Dax, it was very much we're just going to be friendly and we're not going to be pretentious, partially because we didn't have the money to open a pretentious place, and partially because when you're using new techniques and technologies anyway, if you're also projecting this like air about you, then you're just a douchebag. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so like we really wanted to dial back the douchebagness by being kind of friendly and open and not intimidating, and so that our whole culture kind of went that way.
Yeah. So we get it back to the bar myths again. Were there any myths that died particularly hard, or just for some reason just refused to die still?
I mean, not necessarily myths, but bad information.
Yeah.
Honestly, the scariest thing right now for me, especially when I go to large conferences, whether it's TAIL or BCB or Moscow, any of the large shows, there are too many people that are presenting or on panels that aren't actually experts. They're experts in business and in being bartenders and having a bar, but they are not experts in food science. And they're peddling themselves as such. And when they tell somebody this makes it safe, it doesn't. That's one of many things you can do to try to eliminate different causes of potential foodborne illness. But a lot of times people just want to say, oh, egg white drinks, it's always going to be okay because you use alcohol. Well, yes, if you use enough alcohol and let it sit for long enough, but in the time that you do make a cocktail and serve it to somebody, probably not long enough.
No, definitely not long enough.
Yeah.
Not long enough. If your egg is contaminated when it goes into the drink, it will be contaminated when it goes in their mouth. You are not purelling this egg by making a cocktail.
Right.
That's just straight up the truth. That said, I'm willing to take that risk, but that's why you have to asterisk it and put the warning at the bottom of your menu, or should.
But when someone says, I'm making a batch cocktail, this is gonna be preserved, they use the word preserve, because I put a small amount of acid into it, whether it's a vinegar or because it has alcohol in it, or they think that even worse, they'll say it's gonna be preserved because I've flushed out all the oxygen, I'm using CO2 to make it so that no oxidation is happening. well, yes, you've done all those things, but that is only one part of the picture. You need to look at the holistic, how are you handling it from beginning to end? And you have to really think about, is it really addressing all the issues you have? By creating an anaerobic environment, you may be just making it so that you're creating specifically botulism as opposed to other kinds of foodborne pathogens.
I mean, it depends on the product. Really, here's the issue, I think, is that most people when they're working, especially nowadays when a lot of bartenders are trying to move to things that are going to go off premise or design things for sale outside of their bar, you need to distinguish between preservation from a taste standpoint and preservation from a safety standpoint. And so you're always 100% justified in any steps that you take to preserve your product on a taste standpoint, because this is always subjective, right? Safety stuff, you should never do anything that's subjective. I mean, there are some numbers you can look up for some products, and most of the stuff we deal with is inherently safe. So if you're dealing with very high sugar syrups, for instance, they're not going to get dangerous. They might get freaking gross. You might get some freaking mold on the top of it. It's nasty. You ever tasted your moldy simple syrup? It's nasty.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's nasty. You know what I mean? But it's it's possible to get in some of your lower brick syrups, like a yeast growing in it, and the yeast growing in it's gonna A, lower the bricks, B, make it taste fermented, C, cause alcohol. Will you kill someone? No, I don't think there's anything that'll grow in a 20 brick solution that'll kill you. But you know what I mean? It's gonna ruin it from a taste perspective. And so I think people really need to make a distinction. But as soon as they start walking into the safety realm, especially if they're going to sell to somebody else, man, just get a professional to do that.
What about I've been hearing a lot of talk about tobacco infusions in eucalyptus, which are supposed to be dangerous.
Is that correct? Back? Todd Thrasher, I know, did a tobacco thing back in 04 or something like this. But he was is, I guess, from Virginia. And it was he's part of the culture, blah, blah, blah. I really don't know. I mean, I remember the one time I ingested tobacco, I ended up throwing all over my buddy's room in high school. It was a nasty thing, and I never tried chew again. You know what I mean? So I don't know whether that translates into liquor. I'm sure it's a very small amount. I've always taken the position of not putting anything into a cocktail or a beverage that I know might harm someone. Yeah. And it's just as easy. There's so many freaking flavors on Earth. There's so many freaking flavors. You know what I mean? There's just not necessarily a need unless you have a particular cultural desire to do tobacco, and everyone, and But I know a lot of people early were interested, especially with rotovapes, getting leather into things. There's a lot of toxic crap in leather.
Tanning leather is incredibly toxic. There's somebody I saw that's doing a leather-aged cocktail where they're putting strips of leather into a bottle, and that's...
Hey, look at...
I would not drink that.
Look, no. Back in the day, right? Back in the day of veg tan, people used to drink out of leather, right? So they would, you would have your leather, jacks, and you would pour liquids into them. They'd line them with freaking tar pitch, and then you would drink out of them. I don't know, man. I'm not going to make a drink like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm just not going to. Not because I can't prove that it's safe or it's unsafe. And if I can't prove that it's safe, I just stay away. You know what I mean? It's much easier like I say, there are many flavors you can mess with that are known safe.
Right. And with tobacco, the specific concern is the nicotine poisoning, which is incredibly dangerous. But with something like coumarin, so a lot of people, they look at old recipes, they see, they're using tonka beans. Tonka beans are considered toxic because they have this thing called coumarin. Well, if you look a little bit deeper, the reason why they use tonka beans is because vanilla beans are super expensive, and tonka bean tastes similar to vanilla. So why are we so obsessed with using tonka bean when tonka bean was the poor man's substitute for vanilla? We have vanilla, let's just use vanilla, it's not a problem anymore.
Yeah, tonka was so hot in 04, 05. I mean, it does taste good, but everyone wants new stuff. So tonka's illegal, but I can get it, I want it. It's the same way that when absinthe came out, everyone's like, oh, I want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you ever met anyone that actually got messed up on thujone, really messed up on thujone as opposed to just liquor? No, right?
You would die from the alcohol poisoning before you had enough thujone to hallucinate.
Right, so I think that's why those things fall by the wayside. But I mean, I fall victim to this too. I love anything new or different or that I can't get, everybody loves that stuff.
How about for people who work with nitrogen or what advice would you have for them?
Look,
Don't.
No,
No, do it.
Do
Just
it.
Be safe.
Be safe.
Don't be an idiot.
So, talking about liquid nitrogen, right, specifically. So liquid nitrogen is really good at some things, chilling, not these kind of glasses.
Your
but
cocktail,
certain kind of
the
glasses.
Bangkok daiquiri is stellar.
Oh,
Love that
thanks. Yeah,
cocktail,
nitro muddling, like really is much better with liquid nitrogen, and it's not really a bar-friendly technique blender-wise, in my opinion. Like, of course, we're not a blender bar. I mean, if you had blenders behind the bar, but it's a freaking mess. You'd have to like imagine rinsing all those pictures of all those tiny herb things over and over
Yeah.
again during service in the dark.
No thanks.
No thanks. You know what I mean? But so like nitro muddling is actually a good viable bar technique for that, and it's totally safe when it's done right. The problem with it is that it's kind of, once you're working with it a long time, you're so free with it that people who don't know any better think that there are no dangers. And so, at Booker and Dax, we have to go through like a lot of safety training with new people who come in, because liquid nitrogen, unlike deep fry oil, which is the thing I always compare it to, like someone's like, oh, liquid nitrogen is dangerous. So like deep frying is dangerous, and freaking knives are dangerous. You know what I mean? And I'm right. That's true. You know what I mean? And the problem is that as kind of professionals, as bartenders and cooks, the people who are in the restaurant business, we have a built-in kind of common sense meter on knives, and if you're a cook, on fry oil, even if you're just a human being. But you don't necessarily have the built-in correct common sense for what makes liquid nitrogen safe or dangerous. So you need a little training.
Right, and a lot of times the thing with specifically with liquid nitrogen is that as part of the theatrical part, if you haven't been trained on the safety, like one of the worst things you could be doing is wearing gloves. Because you're like, oh, I'm touching something cold, I'm gonna wear these giant gloves, look how awesome I'm doing this thing that's smoking. Well, if you mess up and liquid nitrogen goes inside the glove, then you're boned, right? You're better off not wearing gloves because it'll just fall off your hand. So there's little things like that where if you understand what you're doing, it's not a big deal. But you see somebody like Dave doing something and you're like, oh, it's really easy, I don't have to worry about it. They don't do the proper safety, and then you get in trouble.
Yeah, I always say, I was looking here to see whether I don't have the scar anymore, but like I was once doing a big liquid nitrogen demo a year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, look, the main dangers of liquid nitrogen, right, are that you're going to burn yourself, is the one everyone thinks about from getting liquid. That's actually probably not what's gonna, I mean, it will happen, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But like and obviously serving it to someone like that bastard did in London, England rather, he wasn't in London.
I had no idea what he was doing.
He actually, I spoke to the guy that gave liquid nitrogen that sold the liquid nitrogen to that bartender. And he was like, the guy is just, he basically said he was just an entitled kind of rich douchebag who wouldn't listen to reason, and he was told, not like to pay attention, not to do stuff, and he was just like a complete asshole. And I mean, the guy I was talking to was English, so he dropped a bunch of C-bombs, as the English people are apt to do. But and then I think there were no really great repercussions for that guy doing that. So he served liquid nitrogen to this 18-year-old.
Almost killed a girl.
Yeah, she was 18, because that's the age there. Served it to her, and she drank it. It's just incredibly irresponsible, and stupid. So like that is a danger if you are a complete ass, right? But the ones that are not as obvious are sealing liquid nitrogen in a closed container. It can explode. A German cook blew his hand off by sealing it in a thermos and trying to take it to his girlfriend's house.
He was using it at a restaurant. He had been trained on it because he was using it at the restaurant. He wanted to do like a romantic dinner for his girlfriend, put it in a thermos to take home, and then expanded, kaboom, lost his hands.
Yeah, very bad.
Both his hands?
I think they cut off. They did like, you know who Mark Pauline is, from the artist in California. He blew his hand off, and they glued his big toe onto his thumb. I think they did one of those. I think they did one of those for this dude. So I think he's got use of one of his hands, but I think it involved removing some of his toes.
He got like athlete's foot on his hand.
Yeah.
Really pain in the
And
ass.
so
Put your foot in your mouth
That's,
really
that's,
easy.
that's what we're going to see in the new what is it, Benedict Cumberbatch Marvel movie.
Yeah, the Doctor Strange.
The Doctor Strange, yeah. It's, the 21st century Doctor Strange. He's got like big, toes instead of thumbs.
Toe thumbs. Yeah. So then the other main danger is asphyxiation. So you breathe in pure nitrogen and you die without knowing it. You don't know you're dying because you don't panic.
You were telling me a long time ago about how difficult it was to transport it to the 10th floor of a building.
Right, so you can't, like, if a tank falls over and dumps into an elevator, like, that's it, it's over. And it's not from the cold, it's from all the oxygen will be displaced and you'll be hosed. And just a couple breaths of that and it's over. Like in between, done. Because once you start breathing in pure nitrogen, it strips all the oxygen out of your blood. So it's not just that you aren't breathing, it's literally sucking the oxygen out of your body with every breath. So it's like terrible. So people all the time in industrial situations, not in bars, die from putting their head into a pure nitrogen atmosphere and not knowing it, taking a couple of breaths, passing out and dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing with nitrogen is that most of the air is nitrogen, so you don't notice it, you don't gag. It's like you're breathing regular air. The other thing that's a secret concern for most people who like understand the science of it, and most people don't understand the reality of the danger of it is dry ice. Everyone's like, oh, it's a party trick. They're gonna have a Halloween party. It's gonna make a bubbly punch bowl. But if you don't store dry ice correctly, you're creating a giant CO2 environment. So if you have a cooler full of dry ice, you open it and you stick your head in there, you take a deep breath, you're going to fall back, you're going to pass out. CO2 is heavier than the regular air, than nitrogen and oxygen. So you're literally going to fill up your lungs from the bottom up with carbon dioxide and you will die. You know, you're much more likely to hurt yourself from dry ice than you actually are from nitrogen.
At least CO2 is an irritant event, but like
you will at least cough.
Look, people just don't think about the people just don't think about the right, you know.
But in the same way that America's obsessed with terrorism, you're much more likely to die from a plane crash.
True.
You're much more likely to die from a car accident. You know, you're more likely to die from the flu than you are from terrorism. But we don't think of it that way.
So now we're talking about all the dangerous stuff. I want to talk about some of the fun stuff. Don, you invented something a while back, or stumbled upon something, I guess, called Green Dragon. Do you mind telling us about that?
So this is something that people have been doing for a long time. It's just marijuana extracted in the alcohol. The thing that I did was, and this is something that scientists knew long ago, but I just did not, was that when you have THC in marijuana, it's what the industry now calls THCA, it has a carboxyl acid attached to it. If you don't decarboxylate it, you don't get high. So basically it's called a lock and key mechanism. Every drug that gets you high or happy or sad or whatever, every pharmaceutical, it only works because your body already has a mechanism for accepting it. So the chemical is the key, your body has the lock and key fit together, and then something happens in your body. So if you were to take straight marijuana as the green leafy plant and eat it, you won't get high because you haven't decarboxylated it. And the most common way of decarboxylating something is to use heat. So when you smoke it, you're removing that carboxyl and then you get high because you get the THC without that. So THCA versus THC. Some people in the medical marijuana industry think that THCA is still helpful for something. So if you actually go to Colorado or California, you can find some edibles and things that have the uncarboxylated form of THC as well.
Colorado, it's really easy.
Yeah. But so I discovered this accidentally while living in Cairo for a summer. And we had a bunch of hash, and we wanted to put it into alcohol, and we tried it, and nothing happened. We spent a whole lot of money on hash in a bottle of really terrible Sambuca, and none of us got high.
Why Sambuca, dude? Why?
Muslim country, you couldn't get alcohol. It was either that or like some bootleg Johnny Whistler, like, you know, or Finlandia.
Seems like it'd go good with marijuana.
But we did this, nothing happened, and we forgot about it. We just like left the bottle in the car.
Oh, so how illegal is hash in Cairo?
I don't want to find out. Very illegal as far as I know. Mm-hmm. So we left it in the car, and it's over 100 degrees every day. After a week of being in the car, we were rolling around the desert one day, and we're like, oh yeah, well, there's this bottle again. We took a sip, destroyed all of us. So the average person would just be like, okay, great, but then if you're in that science mindset, the question is why? What happened between when we first took it and now that made it different? And the answer was heat. Right, and it was that decarboxylation process. And so at that point there was the internet, so went online, how does heat affect marijuana? Figured this out. Years later, I had this friend who, she can smoke sometimes, but she doesn't really like to smoke anymore. And she wanted to have edibles, but the problem with edibles, less so a problem now with Colorado and a lot of the regulated stuff, is that you don't know how much marijuana you're getting. So here's a cookie or a brownie. I take this, am I gonna be destroyed? Should I have one? Should I have two? Should I have half? It's hard to say.
True.
So in order to come up with a better dosing system, I was like, well, okay, part of the problem is that when you have marijuana in like a brownie form, you have to still digest it, break it down. It takes a while for it to get into your body. So what if we put it into something that went more directly into your body that wasn't solid but was liquid? So alcohol seems to be the easy answer. If you have a set amount of alcohol and a set amount of marijuana, you can basically titrate to the point where you're like, okay, don't feel it, don't feel it, don't feel it, I feel it. And then you can always go right to that amount so that you know exactly how high you're going to be every single time. And then it was...
How long does THC last?
The half-life is really long, so it's pretty indefinite for... I don't know anyone who's let it sit long enough that it's gotten ineffective.
No, I mean like in your body.
In your body? Weeks.
No, it's like
the high.
The high.
Yeah, the high. Yeah, like how much do you have to? How much do you have to take to keep it surfing?
If you take too much, I know people that have been high for multiple days.
Oh Jesus.
So you should be a little careful. But generally, it's in terms of the feeling, the effect. You're looking at with edibles. You're looking at kind of a 12-hour experience. Is what you should schedule yourself for.
That's why I don't smoke pot anymore, because I feel like the weed nowadays is like I don't have time to be high for like 2 days.
The thing now is session weed. It's like session beer, right?
Yeah,
you gotta get that like low THC weed. But so it was actually working with you that inspired me to do the Green Dragon technique, because it was using the EC canister.
Right, but you've since found that you don't need to do that, right?
Well, but the key is, so originally David done the rapid infusion. So I was like, oh, rapid infusion. Maybe I can do a rapid like extraction from the marijuana. That's still technically true. You can still get a rapid flavor extraction, but the key is that decarboxylation. And so if you're going to make alcohol with marijuana, you want to be able to heat it up to a temperature which would normally boil the alcohol off, but you don't want to lose the alcohol.
So you seal it in the
So
bottle.
you seal it in EC.
Does it taste better rapid though, or no?
It doesn't taste any different because you're taking it up to 100 C
Right.
and you're letting it sit for an hour, so it doesn't make a difference. But the key is putting it in the EC, which is a pressure chamber. It's made to withstand lots of pressure.
Yeah.
I've seen.
Don't tell the EC Corporation that you're doing this though. They get all bent. They get all bent. Whenever you do anything that's not on the box, they get all pretzeled up.
But I've seen terrible recipes where people say put it into a big bowl and do it kind of like melting chocolate, like double boiler style with alcohol. I'm like, that's such a bad idea to be cooking alcohol over a live fire with it's just don't do that.
So what's the easiest way to do
I'm
that?
having that problem now. I'm building this new centrifuge, and I have to really worry about the recipes I give people because of alcohol vapors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like alcohol vapors are no joke, especially no one obviously in a bar in New York is smoking while they're working, but you ever do butane extraction?
Yeah.
Does it taste good?
I don't eat it if I do a butane extraction because I don't trust that I'm going to get rid of all the butane.
Yeah. I wanted to use that for culinary, but butane.
Supercritical CO2 extraction would be the way to go.
If you had money, if
Yeah.
you had money coming out of your freaking ears, you know what I mean?
So if somebody wanted to make Green Dragon at home, what would be the easiest way to do it?
1/8 of an ounce of marijuana, put it into a 750 of alcohol in a 1 liter EC canister, just seal it up, make sure that all the seals are nice, boil a pot of water, bring it to 100 degrees Celsius, which is boiling, put it in, let it boil for an hour, take it off heat, either cool it over ice or just let it naturally cool, and just strain it off. That's it.
So how many more units of high do you get out of an 1/8 with this technique versus smoking?
You get a lot more because you're not burning it, but it's a different feel. So it's hard to say exactly. It doesn't go 1 to 1. In terms of units as far as that goes. The thing though is, if you do it, the problem is that you want to always have less because it tastes good. And the problem is you're this tastes delicious. I'm going to keep drinking this.
Does it shake well,
and
or do you
get
stir
destroyed.
with it?
It shakes well, it stirs well.
Yeah, what cocktails have you made out of it?
I love it in kind of a last word preparation because you're
I was
already
thinking
going
that,
super herbal.
Does it loosh?
It doesn't loosh. It can if you put enough of it, but at 1/8 of an ounce to 750, it generally doesn't. But it really depends what you want to get out of it.
Base spirit do you normally do? Because I'm thinking like tequila.
I love mezcal because I love the smokiness. Because
You also love mezcal, period.
And I also love mezcal. It's true.
I mean,
there's a Charles Visch in Seattle loves doing it with gin.
what's the worst liquor?
The worst liquor?
Malort, besides Malort.
We're talking about just in general, right?
I mean, anything low proof would be bad, so I wouldn't put it into an Amaro or anything like that. The higher the proof, the more extraction you're going to get. So
You ever done it into something herbal? You ever done like a chartreuse dragon?
Yeah.
What we've done is we do a
Excellent.
extraction into gin, and then we add chartreuse to that. Lance Winters is very interested in the science of this.
Science.
of this.
Science.
But in terms of lushing and just the color fixing, it's interesting. So the higher the acid you have in the alcohol, the more it'll fix the color. So if you do it in, let's say, Beefeater, and you do the same thing in, let's say, Vita as like the mezcal, the Vita will be a brighter green and it'll stay green, whereas the Beefeater will come out a little kind of muddy green and then it will go very brown.
What's the proof on Vita?
I'm not sure
Was
what
it
it is.
40?
Really?
Maybe 42?
Beefeater's what, like 42.7?
47.
47? 47?
So it's not the ABV, it's something else.
Something else?
Yeah. Lance was speculating that it was the acidity.
I don't know. Is
Yeah.
there a lot of... I don't know.
I don't know.
I do not have the equipment to measure such things.
Well, how can old fashioned using the half ounce of the
Oh, dangerous.
Dragon Vita?
Delicious, but dangerous.
Yeah. Because it's scary. It tastes really good. And it's like, oh, I want to drink a whole bunch of this stuff, but it'll fuck me up.
Yeah.
That's like I don't know people. I don't know whether he talks about it, so I won't call him out. But like we know people that have experimented with like old laudanum preparations and stuff like that. But I don't really know what it does to you.
So I've done the whole poppy seed tea extraction, and it's no bueno.
No
It
bueno.
does get you high, but
Yeah.
it makes you incredibly ill, like vomiting.
The
bad.
guy I know used opium.
Yeah, if I had a source for clean opium, I would have tried that. But
Yeah.
in my college days, you could order opium poppy, the seed pods,
Right.
break them open, get
Still
rid
has
of the
latex
seeds.
in it?
No, you get the latex-free ones. eBay, you can buy all sorts of things on eBay. And then you brew a tea, and then it tastes terrible. You're probably gonna throw up. It will get you high.
I once did a coca, and I didn't add any base to it, but I did a very, very, very strong coca leaf infusion, very strong, and I had people say that it ruined them.
I went to a house party forever.
Well, for like a day.
Yeah.
Just because they felt really bad. I think they drank more than they thought. It had a different effect.
Yeah.
Then they ended up behaving more poorly after they had it, and so the effect was felt longer.
I went to a house party once where it's an industry person, I won't say their name on camera, but they made it was like a house party at their family's house. It was like, cousins and everybody were there, bartenders. And they made a massive punch with cocaine and ecstasy in it.
With actual cocaine?
Why would you do that?
With actual cocaine?
And ecstasy. He like muddled the ecstasy down. But it was a small amount, so everybody just got a little bit. And
Yeah.
everybody had a good time, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you're like, man, that party got fucking crazy, but
Well, see, the thing
woke
that-
up fine the next day.
Like coca leaf to me is like a natural thing. People have chewed it for thousands of years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like just working with coca leaf is like, I feel like it's like mellow. And it's legal in Colombia. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's
Not
like,
in the U.S.
yeah.
Decoconized, yes, but
Yeah.
Because chewing the leaves is supposed to be a nice buzz, right? That doesn't mess you up
You
too
need
bad.
some lime. They chew it with lime, with
Yep.
not lime the fruit, lime the stone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Because it's base. You need base.
it's I'm just against anyone dosing somebody without letting them know. Like, if you're an adult, you want to make a decision, you want to do something.
Because what if somebody had like a job interview
but
the next day, or they were
you
getting
don't
drug
do
tested
that
or
to
something?
people who
Yeah. What if
don't
you get
know.
drug? Yeah. What
That's-
if you get drug tested? You're
Yeah,
gross.
that's not cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
it's a great party.
Yeah.
So the party justifies the means.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. You have to be a zero tolerance on dosing people without their knowledge.
Yeah,
That's simply a consent issue. You should
Yeah.
not do that.
There are actually a lot of people really mad about it.
Yeah, and rightly so. They should be mad.
Yeah.
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 So-
Now think of all those people who can never say that they haven't done coke.
Yeah.
What if someone's going to?
I'm pretty sure everyone there had done it at some stage.
Yeah, but you said it was a family party.
Yeah, I don't know about the whole family.
That's not cool.
Yeah. So, which is, I imagine you're against giving people Green Dragon against their knowledge. Don't give people Green Dragon against their
Don't
knowledge.
give people anything against their knowledge.
Yeah.
Everyone should,
Alcohol.
alcohol.
Meat if they're vegetarian. You know what I mean?
Just be nice. Take care of each other. Don't be a dick.
You're allowed to not mentally respect someone's wishes, but you have to respect their wishes when they're putting stuff in their body.
Right. You can think they're a terrible person for being a vegetarian, but you can't force them to eat meat.
Or shouldn't.
Shouldn't.
So do you guys ever have, speaking of vegetarians, do you ever have people come in and ask for like cocktails or anything that you can't prepare for them because they're vegetarian? Like for instance, the Benton's Old Fashioned. You ever had a vegetarian get upset about that, or
I mean,
ask you if you could make them a vegan substitute?
no, because it's made with that. In the same way that if someone came in and said, I want a BLT, but I can't have bacon, lettuce, or tomato. It's like, well, you can't have a BLT then.
But you can make it, eat it in front of them.
It's true, and I can really enjoy
tell
it.
you how good it is.
Yeah.
The thing that actually gets me mad now is this whole gluten-free advertising. Like,
I hate it so much.
Oh, so mad at that right now.
Oh, it's the worst. Hey, the air you're breathing, gluten-free.
Well,
for an extra
near a
$10.
bakery.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel a responsibility to try to not include something that's going to mess someone up unless I have to. I mean, the one thing that we have in a lot of our drinks is milk in small quantities. Because we do a technique called milk washing, so like a lot of our drinks have this in it, and so people are like, "Can you make that drink without that?" I'm like, "No," but I have plenty of other drinks that don't have that.
Right.
But I think it's the average, and I've said this like a million times, the average vegetarian definitely who doesn't necessarily feel welcome at most restaurants, I think should feel welcome at a bar. And same goes with vegans. You shouldn't have to feel like you have to choose the one drink on the menu that is good for you. And that goes with using new techniques. So if you're going to clarify, that's why I don't write any recipes for clarifying with gelatin anymore, because why when I can use something else, agar? If there's nothing else on the market that would allow me to do something except for something that was meat-based, then I'd be like, you know what, all right, boom, but if I have an alternative, why the hell would I try to alienate a group of people that in general are very sophisticated drinkers, because they can't go out and enjoy necessarily every restaurant at the same level.
True, good point. And back to the meat and the Benton's Old Fashioned, which is a cocktail we ran on the menu at Polite for a while, and people really dig it. I love it. Obviously, it's still on the menu at PDT. What was the inspiration behind that drink?
Bacon is delicious. Sometimes when you have bacon in the morning with your pancakes or waffle, you get some maple syrup on it. Maple syrup, bacon works. All pork products and bourbon products seem to work well together. So it's the Venn diagram of flavors that come together.
So, and Benton's bacon, like that specific bacon is, I haven't had every bacon in the world, but of all of the bacons I've had, and it's a substantial number, right? It's the smokiest.
It's super smoky.
By far.
Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of people who try to make that recipe at home are not using Benton's, and what they don't realize is that they had a good source of leftover Benton's fat, which is the smokiest bacon fat in the world, and made in such a way that it wasn't overheated in the pan like a normal person's bacon would be. So you have a lot of, because when you overheat bacon fat, it goes terrible. It goes really terrible. Mm-hmm. So you have like a lot of like high quality, super smoky fat is like ripe for something like that. Versus, if you're just going to buy, your local Key Foods brand bacon, that's not.
Yeah, it's not going to do it.
No.
Well, and for that drink specifically, it came out of a time and place. So, in New York at that time, Momofuku Sambar just opened. Noodle Bar had been around for a couple of years. And I remember going to Sambar and hanging out with Tin Ho and him being like showing me this like refrigerator full of bacon fat. And it's like, what are you doing with all this? Like, I don't know, we produce so much of it because we use Benton's bacon and a bunch of things. I just have all this fat. And I was like, Benton's bacon fat, you say? And then Wiley and
Tona. Tona?
Tona and Sam Mason and Evan Freeman were all playing with the technique.
Was Evan still there? I thought that they did that after they left.
No, I think everyone was still there at that point.
Really?
Yeah. Because this would have been 07?
Because they were doing, Sam started back when they're still calling things like enfleurage before like pot washing became a term, even though it's not actually enfleurage. And then Tona, I think, did the peanut butter.
Yeah. But they did that like enfleurage style too, where they spread it on a pan.
Yeah. Old school.
Old school style, yeah. So it was, the technique was starting to people were starting to play with it. The ingredient was there. It was because of this local restaurant that we were right next to. We had a great relationship with, and so it just kind of happened. And also, I don't know about you. I think that when I see a lot of the drinks on the Booker and Dax menu, I think that we kind of think the same way. It's food and drink has this amazing ability to transport you to a time and place. It's like a time machine. In the way that if you ever see Ratatouille, at the spoiler alert for Ratatouille, in the end when the evil critic eats the Ratatouille, and it transports him back to this moment where his mother taking care of him after he skinned his knee or something, right? Where if you smell and taste something, it takes you back to a place. So can you make a cocktail that reminds somebody of something that they already know? And not all cocktails do that, but a really interesting cocktail to me is one that can do that. And not all cocktails should do that. But
Wait, they served the kid Ratatouille after he skinned his knee?
Listen, they're
He's
French.
French.
All right.
It was comforting him. But yeah, so the Benton's Old Fashioned, I think the reason why it's successful, besides the fact that everyone loves bacon, is because it reminds you of something that you already know, even though it's not something so specific.
Right. Yeah. Also, I'm personally a huge fan of familiar but different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's the canned peach cocktail that you guys have at Booker and Dax?
Yeah.
I love that drink.
The son of a peach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's that specific flavor, it reminds me of that canned peach of my childhood.
Yeah. I mean, I forget whose spec that was, but I was like, I walked into the bar. I was like, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna take canned peaches, because everyone loves them. We're gonna blend them up. We're gonna make a syrup. All right, now, make a drink. And then they made the son of a peach, and it's been on the menu since we opened. It's been we can't take it off because people like it.
What's all in that drink?
Jeez, man, I don't even remember the specs. It's some smoky, something real smoky. I forget what we use now. We switched it a couple times.
Or something?
No, it is,
Yeah.
but I forget which one.
Oh.
Because it switches all the time. The canned peach, syrup. Man, I should know all those specs. I only really like even my specs. Sometimes I forget them. You know what I mean? Especially because they never become. That's the sad thing about using new techniques is they never become, or they haven't yet become widely adopted, just because people don't have the techniques to use them. So we have some really good drinks who, I think, are good enough to be made not just at our bar, but it's just such a pain in the ass to make them.
True, we wanted to do the Bangkok daiquiri on our menu, and it just wasn't the way you made it.
You see some liquid nitrogen. That's the thing. It's like that's what's such a pain in the ass. Like that is my spec, right? And so I'm like, and it's everything I like. It's simple, you know what I mean? It's a crowd pleaser, and that's it. Those are my things. It's a delicious crowd pleaser and simple. That is I feel every bartender should aspire to that combination of things. Except for no one can make it if they don't have the stuff. So it's it is simple for us, but it's not and it's simple ingredient wise. I mean, it's just a freaking daiquiri with some Thai basil muddled into it, but it just doesn't taste the same when it's done standard muddled.
Yeah, you have to use a liquid nitrogen for that.
Yeah, or your blender tastes almost as good, but still, it's not really good for bar flow. It doesn't work in a bar.
Well, so if you're going to do it in advance, though, and you don't have liquid nitrogen, but if you had dry ice, you could always freeze it with dry ice and then blend it as well, couldn't you?
You can even do it without you can even do it without the I guess it's just the problem is if you do a pre-blend, it really only stays at kind of the level of freshness for an hour, and then I don't know, why would you bring something like that on a menu if when you serve it you know that it's not as good as it was. You want it to last at least a shift, and it's not in most places, right? So if you have a high volume joint, right, you could say, I mean, it depends on your mental theory, right? I've just become accustomed to the fact to be you know what, it's okay to make something and know you're going to sell out of it and then 86 it, as long as then you know the quality is going to be high. Because you don't want to be stuck at the end of the night with a bunch of bottles of crap that you can't sell and the next day is garbage. Right. That's the worst thing in the world. So you have to, but a lot of times I know at the beginning we didn't want to put anything on that we knew we'd have to 86 all the freaking time because that's irritating. You know what I'm saying?
Especially if you have some of your regulars only come in late night, every time I come in, you're out of it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so unless you're going to be one of those places that paper clips the special to the thing or just does a verbal, but I find that in a cocktail bar, you always have that person be like, hey man, you got some off the menu? But most of the time, people aren't doing verbals. You know what I mean? And
Right.
like, I think it's irritating to have to, at a bar, tell someone to daily specials like you're at a freaking restaurant, so people read the menu. I don't know, it's hard. It's a hard problem, mentally, to deal with something that doesn't last overnight. That's why we don't put citrus, other than grapefruit, we don't put like lime or lemon into carbonated drinks because I'm not going to throw all that liquor away at the end of the night. You know what I mean? And so, it's just a question of like half of figuring out how to open Booker and Dax was figuring out how to take the techniques that I had used for years at the French Culinary and doing demos in bars, and then making sure that they weren't money losers or time wasters in a bar scenario. In fact, half the reason or more that I wanted to open Booker and Dax was to prove that all these new techniques were viable in a bar scenario. And I think, we've shown that. I think you have to change some of your practice to do it. And I also think that some of the stuff could be adopted in very high volume situations, like the use of, especially like use of pre-bottled, and I think many people are doing that now. I don't think as many people have adopted the need for like really good refrigeration to do it. But I mean, that stuff, not just at the time we were doing it, other people were also doing it. I think so people have accepted that kind of technique. I think some of the other techniques also are becoming more accepted, but as people have the monetary and space capabilities to do things like clarify more readily, it's my sincerest hope that these techniques will become more widespread in the bar world.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, because look, bartenders are creative people. Like, you're in the business because you're a creative person, right? I mean, like, there's plenty of freaking ways to make money. And especially like if all you really want to do is make money, then you'd go down to, I don't know, one of these crap hole bars down on I'm not gonna call it the street because then, but you know what I mean? Like, you go to one of these crap holes and you'll just be like, 5 deep in like in shit tank beers and plastic cups, and you're gonna make a lot more money as a bartender.
True.
You know what I mean? Everyone who's in the business that I deal with is there because they're a creative person and they have pride in what they do. So those kind of people, if they have the ability to use new techniques and ingredients, I think will.
Part of the problem, though, I think now is that people use the techniques for the sake of using the techniques, and they don't really understand why you should be using a technique. So I see a lot of people doing sous vide syrups right now, and I'm like, does that really need to be sous vide? Is it better that way? Is it faster? Does it keep longer? I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that technique right now.
There's also, part of that is that almost nobody, if you have a recipe that works, almost nobody has the time to figure out whether every step is necessary. Because like, you spend like an afternoon developing a drink, right? And you get a recipe down. That's it. Like, okay, now I gotta get all my freaking bartenders and bar backs up on this recipe. Gotta get it all right, blah blah blah. And then I can't let anyone freaking deviate from the way we do it, because if somebody deviates from the way that they do it and they mess up the drink, then we might not know until 15-30 customers have had a shit tank drink. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so there's a very inbuilt thing in restaurant and bar world to not change that recipe once you've figured one that works, until somebody F's it up and you're like, oh, you F'd that up? It's still good. Let's do it that way now. You know what I mean? Like, that's how all that stuff
You
changes.
just save us all a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm sure both of you have seen that happen.
Yeah, completely.
Definitely. Going back to what you were saying before about not knowing your own specs, do you find that this is something that I definitely do? Once I figured something out, I don't think about it anymore because I figured it out, and then I just forget it, and then I have to go look through notes to figure out what it is that I figured out.
100%, especially, I'm not behind the stick. I'm not day in, day out. You know what I mean? So, the folks who are actually, making them again and again every night, it's like, even some of my favorite specs of all time that I've ever come up with, like, I like, unless they're specs that I've done at like large scale demos, they're not, like, there are certain specs from the bar that for some reason or another I've never done outside the bar, and so like I don't have them in my brain. Like, we have a very salty drink at the bar called a Corsair that's made with preserved lemon, some form of agave, and some lime juice, but I don't have the exact spec in my head, even though that's like what I order for myself when I go in a lot of the time. But
I heard Adam Savage, Mythbusters, say the difference between science and fucking around is writing it down. You got to write it down.
Oh my God, have you had that happen where like that's great, and then you thought the other freaking person wrote it down, and then the next day no one remembers the spec?
Yeah. Recipe development, you're like trying all these cocktails, you assume somebody's writing it down, no one writes it down, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows how much longer you have to fool around so you find it again.
And the other thing is like, there's two aspects, right? So for us, and for anyone really, there's like applying observation and your observation skills to making kind of normal cocktails, right? So that's one aspect. But then when you are using new techniques, I think that and especially if you're doing a lot of prep work and it becomes more like kind of kitchen work, is where I think most people fall short who haven't been doing it for a long time, is ensuring that the ingredient is consistent and that it lasts over the life of the ingredient. So we do a lot of, okay, we want to put this on the menu, make some, let it sit around a week, let's see whether it's good. Then we keep that bottle and we're like, keep tasting it and figure out when it starts dropping off in quality or changing, so that we can kind of get our pars right and like not have to overload someone with prep every day, but at the same time not ever have a product go downhill so that someone's getting a shitty drink. And so like that's, I think, a skill that a lot of people don't necessarily have built in once they start using new techniques. And it's not that difficult, but I think they need to do it. And the other thing I think people don't necessarily, like one of the things about thinking analytically about drinks in general is I think a lot about the interplay between balance of the taste versus dilution and temperature, right? So if you're going to serve something on the rock, like how the balance of the drink changes over time. And a lot of that comes from the fact that I've had to do a lot of heavy analysis of different recipes and how they interact with dilution and temperature. Mm-hmm. So like one thing we do at the bar that I think a lot of people maybe do but don't talk about explicitly is that when someone wants to put a new drink on the menu, I'm like, great, it tastes good. Now make one. I want you to make one, and it's going to sit over there. I don't want anyone to touch it. And then in 15 minutes, we're going to taste it and see how it is. And then we see how the drink changes over 15 minutes. And then we'll have one where if that works, we'll do like a nurse test. So like, we'll get a drink, especially if it's on a rock, and we'll put it down and we'll be like, okay, take a sip, swirl it, wait, do it, and just like let a drink ride so we can see because we're like, we get a drink, we're like, all right, what's the next drink? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But like a lot of your customers aren't going to do that. And a lot of specs really, really blow themselves apart as they sit, whether they warm up and they turn to shit, or whether they dilute with the rock and they turn to shit.
And some get better.
Some get better. In fact, I had that happen the other day. Someone made a drink and I was like, man, that's really good when it warms up a little bit. Let's change the spec so it doesn't come out as cold when you're making it. But I think a lot of people don't bother running that kind of sit test. They get used to just tasting it being like, good, let's go. You know what I mean? And I think drink deserves a little more thinking about its evolution.
Yeah, especially if you're selling them for, prices we sell, 12,
yeah,
10, 12, 14.
14. We're at 14. I think a lot of people are up to, what's the...
16 somewhere.
15, 16 a lot of places.
Yeah, except for, like, we're 14, but we add the tax on top.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the guys who are like 15, 16, the tax is built in, right?
Yeah.
Well, in places like 11 Madison now, they went no tipping, so now the tip is included in the price as well.
All of 11 Madison with no tipping?
Yeah.
How do the servers like it?
I think they like it now because, 11 Madison, super fine dining, right? So they know in advance, most of the money comes from the floor, not necessarily from the bar. So they can schedule out ahead. So kind of like what Next did, where everyone gets a salary now because they know exactly how much money they're going to make for the next couple of months.
So it's not shift based?
It is shift based, but it's based on your given shifts, so according to like how much you actually work, and so it's not like a salary, but everyone gets the same amount of money for the amount of time they work.
Communism's a farce.
Anyway, are you feeling the burn?
No. Gents, thank you so much for coming out and hanging with me. You can buy Don's famous strainer, the Don Lee strainer from CocktailKingdom.com.
It's the only strainer I use.
Yeah, it's my favorite, man.
Wait, hold on. Can I say
also,
something?
don't forget to pick up Liquid Intelligence. Dave Arnold, it's on Amazon. Incredible book. Great resource for when you're creating cocktails and looking at them from an intelligent standpoint. One last note. Brother, what's up?
Everyone is using the strainer wrong. Use the strainer the right way.
What are you doing?
The point of the strainer is it has tight coils, so you don't need to close the gate. We needed to close the gate back in the day because we had shitty coils. The tight coils means that if you want to pour fast, keep the gate open. You close the gate when you want to make an even tighter enclosure, so you get even less ice chips, or if you want to split the pour. But if you're like, it's not coming out fast enough, it's because you're closing the gate when you don't need to close the gate anymore.
Also, but the one thing I'll say about this freaking strainer is I love not having to freaking double strain. So many drinks, the texture is destroyed. Especially our drinks, especially the ones using that technique I was telling you called milk washing. If you double strain it, the texture is just freaking ruined. And so most people are jackwads and they can't keep the reasonable crystals out when they're doing a single strain. And so that strainer is the only one. The only time the nitro muddle drinks, like the Thai basil, that one we have to double strain because nothing will stop that but a double strainer. And so we keep a bunch of old school crap hole strainers around to just let them flow because yours are a bitch to clean out when there's herbs all stuck in all that little
But we keep multiple strainers.
Oh yeah, no, but those are the only ones. Other than for nitro muddle drinks, those are the only ones we let in the bar. Oh, and can I pump something?
Yeah, please do.
If you want a marginally better cocktail, buy the cocktail cube to shake with. Yay!
It's pretty amazing, and that's one of those weird things where.
What is the cocktail cube?
Oh, you gotta explain this.
So you know how we've all known for a while, and I thought it was kind of bullshit, but then verified it a number of years ago that shaking with a big cube makes a better drink. Right? I don't know why. It just does. But it turns out it's just that the shape of the cube is that big cube is what does it. So we made a fake, it's just that shape out of a similar material to what you use for your ice molds, actually, just a little firmer. But it doesn't affect the temperature at all. So when you're going to do an event, or if you don't want to freeze a bunch of the, we freeze a lot of the 2x2s out of the Cocktail Kingdom ice, the big, what do you call it? It's 2x2, right?
Ice cube tray, yeah, 2x2.
And we freeze those, and that's what we shake with normally. But if you don't want to freeze those, or if you are doing an event, you don't want to lug all that nice ice and then ruin it and then throw it away. You just bring one of these cubes. It doesn't affect the dilution at all. So you load your shit ice into your shaker, and you throw this kind of fake texturizing cube on top of it, shake like normal, dump and go, dump and go, dump and go, dump and go, just rinse the cube off, and in between, go, and you don't need to bring the good ice with you, and you get the same texture that you would off of good ice.
Are you shitting? It works?
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those weird things where you experiment, you observe, and it works, and you don't necessarily know why. It doesn't sound like it should work, but it does.
Yeah, and so and yes, the difference is marginal, but my whole world is based on margins of quality. You know what I mean? And so it's and you can use it forever. You know what I mean? They're dishwasher. I have found that you should probably put it through the wear-washer once before you start shaking with it, because it's a manufactured item.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And we forgot to write that in this batch of instructions, so sorry. Put it through the wear-washer. Yeah, also available on Amazon.
Yep.
There you have it. All right, well, let's do goodbye one more time.
Let's actually drink it this time.
Yeah, cheers.
Well, I had drank mine before. Victorian pineapples.
Delicious.
Thank you for watching Bartender at Large. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, or leave a comment below. Also, keep your eyes open for the Bartender at Large movie, which comes out summer 2016.